All right, welcome back to Crew Call with the Scooters, and I am with one of my favorite artists. I know I say this all the time, but I really do mean it because I've been following you, Michael Lotenero, for such a long time, and I just think your art is so incredible. I want to talk about that, but thank you so much for taking time out of your extremely busy schedule because you share time between here and New York. Am I correct about that? And you're
Yeah.
kind of all over the place. Your art's all over the place, and right before we started, we were talking about your pieces being at Talia, and another one of my favorite artists, Jeremy Raymer, is there too. And I walked by, I think it was last week, and I was like, oh, two of my favorite artists together. I was like, that's so awesome. I love that you have been embraced by Pittsburgh, but also the world because your art is everywhere. So thank you so much for being here today with me.
Well, thank you for asking me.
Yeah, absolutely. So we, I met you, and I love this story because it brings up another one of my favorite people in the world, which is Alan Bortz from A to Z Communications. I met you a billion years ago. You were doing, and this is how we're going to start because I want to talk about how you got into doing what you're doing, besides the fact that you just have incredible talent oozing out of your pores. But you were doing packaging for Alan Bortz at A to Z Communications, and it was within food. And so, how do you go from food packaging to this exquisite art that is so overwhelmingly beautiful, but also haunting and mysterious? How do you make that jump? How did your career start?
Well, it's funny. I mean, I was trained as a graphic designer, and I was always painting and sort of exhibiting, and that was always the big dream was just to be a painter. But the graphic design was like the bill paying thing. So, but I really love design, and so I started a company actually with Rick Bach and Dave Zimmerly back in the day, 96 Eyes Design, and
Yeah.
we did a lot of freelance work for some of the local agencies, and we got some of our own clients, and we both, we stayed really busy for a while, and then after a while, we kind of just parted ways and just did different things, and things just sort of organically, one day the art just kind of took over, which has been great. So yeah,
Where
but
did you where did you go to school for graphic design? How did you get into all that?
in terms of graphic design, or how did I?
Yeah, in terms of, did you go to school for graphic design?
I did. I went to the Art Institute of Pittsburgh back in the day, and yeah, I mean, I really actually enjoyed it. I met some of the best people, and some of like my longest, closest, dearest friends. We're still all really tight, and yeah, it was a great experience for me. So that's where I started, and yeah, we started a small company and did that for a while. And like I said, I was exhibiting, locally and doing things while I was doing the graphic design sort of gig. And yeah, like I said, it just kind of slowly started to take over, and I was like trying to juggle both of them. And then I remember one day I just kind of made the jump of like saying I'm just going to open a studio, and that was really just a few years ago, just to really, because I was still doing it out of the house for like forever, and it was a scary experience to say I'm actually going to do this, full time and just commit to that. And then once I committed, it became what it is. Like it's kind of crazy. So
Well, I'm glad you took the bet on yourself because I think it's absolutely incredible. So I want to talk a little bit about your art. So if for people, I mean, you paint.
yes.
Let's talk about the medium in which you paint. Is it canvas? Is it wood? Are you on, fabric? Like how is that? And what is it? Oil? Is it what? What? Tell me all about what you do.
Well, originally I started with doing a lot of work on paper because I had limited space, so I could stack it and do a ton of stuff and just keep working and just keep stacking it up without taking up too much real estate. Now it's a lot of canvas, larger canvases. I do a lot of work on glass, like reverse painted glass, plexiglass, clear vinyl. Like I stretch clear vinyl and paint it from the back. So that's sort of like reverse painting kind of idea. So you sort of finish the painting and then work backwards from there. So it's fun. I really enjoy that a lot. I do a lot of sculpture now too.
Hmm.
Some plaster, wood, steel, all kinds of stuff really. So yeah, I just whatever I can get my hands on.
Who influenced this passion? Like who did you, I mean, did you grow up in a family of artists or did you like watch somebody, I mean, were you like Bob Ross at 5 years old watching him going, I could do that?
No, it's funny. I mean, I think I was more of a Mr. Rogers kid, and so, but I think, I don't know, my mom was artistic and she was always very much into like decorating and designing the house. And our experiences were always very kind of open, and like we did a lot of interesting things and a lot of travel and stuff like that. She wasn't an artist per se, but our life was very artistic, I would say. And then I had two aunts. One was an interior decorator in Miami, and the other worked in advertising in Cleveland. And they both were also very, sort of nurturing and sort of showed me a lot of things. And just growing up around that was like really influential, I would have to say, just sort of seeing art, sort of being a way of life and having it be almost like, not really art and commerce, but sort of seeing those two work together and seeing people that were doing things to like have a creative outlet and just make a living. So yeah, I'd say those are some of my biggest influences. So it was since an early age, and like my family was very encouraging. Like they're always just like, "You're going to be an artist." I remember from when I was like a little kid, they were always just like, I wasn't discouraged, that's for sure. So it was, I was lucky.
You are
Yes.
lucky because a lot of parents would be like, "You're going to go into become an accountant."
Right. Yeah, exactly. No, yeah.
Here's a coloring book on the side. I mean, so here you are in your studio, and your studio is amazing. I've walked past it a million times. And again, you're real close to a Raymer, a mural.
Oh yeah, that's right.
You're in the strip
Yeah,
district.
right around the corner.
Exactly. But you're in that space. Are you like the process of continual? Are you painting every day? Is that something that you get up and you're thinking, like, how does that all happen? Like, where do the images come from?
Well, early on, like I painted every day. Like I was just in it. It was in my house. Like I just woke up and it was just right there. Now that I have the studio, I sort of separate a little bit. I don't paint every day, but I try to get down here almost every day if I can. And even if it's just a matter of just tinkering around or reorganizing or just looking at what I have going on and just sort of letting things, gel a little bit before I bust into work. Because most of the time it's I don't know, I'll do like like a larger body of work at a time and just really go crazy for like a couple weeks and then just take a rest, and just do other things and just let it, so it's a different process for me now as I've gotten older and just sort of, I try to be more, maybe not so much more efficient with my time, but just sort of, you know, just blocking things out and just really just hitting it really hard and then just taking a break,
When you
enjoying
say
it.
you hit something really hard for a couple of weeks, is it a certain concept where you're doing kind of large scale and small scale all around that? Are you doing, was it why he did when they do the pencils and you're trying to figure that out, or do you immediately go into the medium and just start working with paint?
Yeah, I try to just go in and start working. I think whenever I have like an idea or I try to plan something out, it's always a disaster, and I'm just always I'm always like disappointed, And I feel like that's more like the designer side of me, where like you have an objective and you want to like do something, and then you know, I just always remember clients, it's just like either being disappointed or working around other people's expectations, and I try not to have even my own expectations. I just want to like enjoy it, like and that's the freedom that I enjoy about making art is that I can just come in and do whatever I want and not really even sometimes even know what I want. That's my favorite part is just letting things kind of happen and then figuring it out sort of later. Like kind of like like finding pictures in the wallpaper sometimes, or like you're like, oh, okay, and then maybe making that into something as I see it. And just letting things sit and not being disappointed right away when something's not like perfect. Like letting it
Right.
change and evolve. So yeah. So I try to enjoy it more as opposed to just, beating myself up about it, I guess. So there's not, there's angst, but it's like, it's not like that angsty as it used to be in terms of the process, I would have to say.
Right.
So, yeah,
And but you also do commissions. Am I correct about that? Do you do commission work, or if people come
I
into?
do. Yeah. And it depends, on what, someone would want. I try, and since I'm painting all the time, it doesn't really bother me if the client has like an idea at least, or like something that they want to work towards, then I'll just give them a couple options because eventually it's just my work anyways, and
Right.
it'll find a home somewhere else if they don't like it. But I like to give them a choice. Like if they say I want, this painting, then I'll give them like 3 paintings to look at and choose from because I feel like it's kind of an advertising trick, to sort of give. If you don't give people a choice, then they feel kind of pushed into like a direction. So like I like to give them a choice, so it helps. So yeah, and that's the way I get around that because sometimes commissions can be really pretty dodgy and pretty tough to deal with. But I do them like fairly often. So
Yeah,
yeah,
you've done some now with the largest, because you do, I would say, pretty large scale pieces. You have some, what I'll say, reasonable art where it's like, oh, okay, you can frame that, but you also have some really large pieces. I mean, we saw your show at Zinca Gallery. Uh,
Yeah, yeah.
was that a year and a half ago? That was before COVID.
It was
Uh,
right before COVID.
yeah,
Yeah.
which was
And
an
like,
incredible, just a beautiful, beautiful show. Um,
thank you.
body of work, absolutely beautiful. But when you're putting something like that together, I mean, how are you choosing? Are you painting specifically for a show like that, or how does all of that? I mean, I have. It's amazing to me because when you look around and you go through it, there's a thin red line that connects everything. There, you can tell that there's some story happening, and when you're walking through, you were with, of course, a bunch of people, and I was like, just pull and have you walk us through everything because there's so many stories that happen. So how do you conceive something like
It's funny. I guess at a certain point, like I was working on that body of work, and Jeff came by and I shared it with him, and then we just sort of decided to do the show. It was pretty organic. I mean, I can't say that like, I mean, that was probably the first show I've done in over maybe 12 years. It's been a long time. Like I haven't done gallery shows in a long time. I mean, I sell my work and I send it to galleries and then they sort of find places for the work to go, but I haven't really done like a cohesive show in a long time. So it was really fun actually to get like an entire body of work up in a room and sort of see it come together. And you don't really realize that you're working towards something, but I'm just in the studio working and creating a certain amount of things. And when you put them together and you can see them together, it does make a narrative. And you sort of in retrospect go back and try to dig it out and figure out what you were doing, and it's fun actually, to
that?
like that process. So it's a good thing to do shows. Sometimes they're actually like, I hate doing shows because like they're kind of like terrifying and just like dealing with like the public and the whole thing of standing there with your work. It's just really uncomfortable for me. Yeah, it's like
The Vanna White of it all.
exactly. It's like the worst part of it. But then I do, once I'm at the show, then I really enjoy seeing everybody and sharing my work, and it's really great. But it's just hard to get over that hump of doing a show. So
Well, the opening night, it was packed. I mean, there was no room to move, so everybody there was major fans. You could hear the people just standing and talking about the pieces. There is some sense of cohesiveness in all of the work. There's a almost like a shadow of things. There's always kind of the man. Is that a self reflection? Like, where does that? I see a lot of the pieces, they have sort of a hidden figure throughout all of them, or a shadow. What's the thought behind something like
it's something that's always popped up in my work. I feel like I do sculptures of the same figure and then I do paintings. So it's kind of like this weird circular logic of doing paintings of sculptures and then sculptures of paintings. It's like
that?
this kind of I don't know how to describe it, but I feel like I'm trying to get at something with the physicality of like an actual statue, but then doing a painting of a statue in a painting, and then like it's hard to describe, but I feel like I'm trying to find something with that figure that's like not in this world, like in the solid, but in like the ethereal. It's kind of a little crazy, but I try to get into that. And then the face has always been there. I started, one of the first things I did was sort of like a take on the Statue of Liberty, and it was like the Statue of Liberty on one side, and the Statue of Lethargy on the other side that had like one eye closed and his mouth sewn shut, and like one ear like kind of like open, and it was sort of like just a statement on on America. I felt like, and just how things were. Then the face just kept popping up, and I sort of come back to it as like a meditation in my work, like that face, because they always turn out different. It's like even though it's like the same idea or the same thing, it's like it's interesting to me to see how they change every time. So yeah, I don't know if that explains
It
your
does,
question.
but it's haunting. I think that's the biggest, it's beautiful, but there is a hauntingness of it. It just feels like subconscious. I think that's why I'm always drawn into it, because it's just like, what's he trying to tell me? Like, how am I supposed to feel about that? Because it's always, you feel very connected to the work. I think that's the other thing, the way that you paint, you feel very much drawn into it. It's not something that you're looking at and it's looking back at you. It's just like pulling you in, which I really love. The tones, like the stuff behind you right now, the pieces behind you, the color scape of that feels a little different than some of your other pieces that you've done, which is much more on the grayscale, black and white tones. So can you talk to me about what's behind you?
Yeah, that is actually an old piece that I had exhibited at one of the old Carnegie Associated Artist shows back like in the 90s, actually. It's called X-Ray Wish. And it was just sort of based on the, I don't know if you can see all of it, but it's like a 3-panel canvas. And it was just based on, yeah, it's pretty big. And it was based on sort of like the comic books with like the X-ray specs guy in the back. And I was always intrigued with that as a kid. Like what if, you could see, like through like walls and just see things. And then I took it another step further, like seeing into the past and seeing into the future with like these special glasses. And that's kind of what it is, really. So, yeah.
And Pittsburgh, you grew up here. Like, where did you grow up and why stay in Pittsburgh? I mean, how do you feel about the art community as it sits right now? I mean, there's some really amazing artists, but I don't think people would say, oh, Pittsburgh is, it's not New York, but maybe it's becoming more of an art scene.
Yeah, I think it is. I grew up in Cleveland and Miami, Florida, sort of like bouncing back and forth between my parents and grandparents and stuff like that. So it was two very different sort of ways to grow up. But then I came here to go to art school and I just stayed, and because I just love Pittsburgh. I mean, it has just a great feel for it. And I had a lot of friends that are always like, oh, Pittsburgh, blah, 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 I'm leaving. A lot of people left, and I could never feel that like that. Like I wanted to leave. I just really enjoyed being here. Like, it's just, and now that the city's sort of catching up and, there's just so much happening. It's just kind of like, I'm glad I stayed because like, it's just, there's just a lot happening. And the art scene, I think, is great. I mean, there's just so many more artists. There's so much more happening. I think it's, just really turning into quite a scene. I mean, I think even back, like, when I was getting started, like on the South Side, like in like the 90s with like Rick Bach and Bill Miller and Tim Cullen and like all these artists, like we were all just sort of organically together. And just,
Right.
with like, the Beehive coffee shop, like we all kind of like would hang out there. And there was just like this organic art scene. And, I feel really fortunate to have been part of that and sort of grown from that.
You wasn't one of your pieces part of a scandal? Didn't somebody steal one of your pieces from the Beehive? Was that a thing?
Yeah, that was a thing. Yeah, someone stole the what are you stirring at, the head that holds the stir sticks, and I think they returned it.
They did. They absolutely did.
Yeah.
I guess I really shouldn't know that. I know way too much about you. I remember thinking, wow, I can't believe somebody stole that. Yeah, it's amazing. Who's inspired? I mean, everybody in Pittsburgh. Who do you follow? Who do you get inspired by?
In terms of local artists?
Yeah. In music,
Yeah.
arts, anything.
Everyone really. I mean, there's so much happening. I mean, Gavin Benjamin's. I'm a big fan of his. I don't want to like name too many names and disappoint people if I don't mention their names. But there's just a lot of great people. I mean, Rick, of course, is like always a big influence on me. I feel like we influence each other quite a bit. Bill Miller. Gosh, there's just so many people. I mean, Jeremy is doing great work.
Yeah.
I mean, everyone's like, there's just a lot of just exciting things happening, and it's just nice to see people really sticking their necks out and like sort of making things happen. I mean, what's going on, like Radiant Hall is such a great thing. Just providing space for artists, I think that's fantastic. The Brew House has always been great. Yeah, I don't know.
It's amazing what Ryan's done with Radiant Hall and that whole conglomerate of people. I just think it's unbelievable to walk through those spaces and go, how did this? It's just amazing. There's all these little pockets of really incredible artists all over the city. I think it's amazing.
I do too. Yeah, it's great.
Is your son an artist?
He is, and he's also, I was going to list him as like one of my influences because we do influence each other, and his work is just really growing, and he's doing some incredible stuff, and it's exciting to watch and to see him, just turn into, just he's a brilliant artist, so it's fun to watch. So yeah, it's great.
Yeah, very, very talented. So if I'm a young artist in the city, what's the best advice you can give me? What would you say to somebody that's just starting out?
Just work, just make the work, like don't worry so much about, I don't know, just the likes or the shows or like all that stuff, just really just, keep your head down and just make the work. Cause like in the end, like, that's what is going to talk to people, and just focus on that, focus on your craft and focus on, that part of it. Cause eventually people will find it, and don't worry so much about making it, like for, I guess it's kind of like that Bukowski quote, or like what, off on his tombstone where it's like, don't try, it's like, yeah, it's like, don't try for all of the things that are unnecessary, but just focus on your work.
Right.
So.
But you always did a good job of figuring out how to make money with it. And there's some brilliance there in terms of entrepreneurship, because you are always, I mean, to be able to move into a place where you're just doing art full time. What were you thinking about, or how did you even come into that? Because you leave graphic design and then open up the studio full time. So you have an entrepreneurial spirit, I would say. And when you bet on yourself, what was the thing that kept you going?
I mean, I wouldn't say I'm like a great business person. I would definitely say I'm just like, I just don't want to have a regular job, and that's the part that keeps me motivated. It's just like not having the regular job. I've had the regular job, I've done that sort of thing, and I was very unhappy. It just wasn't for me. And just being able to make art every day, or not make art, but just having that choice, like, is what keeps me going. It keeps me motivated and keeps me happy.
That's extremely important. And what are you working on now? Like, what's the next? What are you working on? What are you excited about?
I mean, I could walk you around a little bit, or
yes, absolutely.
I don't know if that would work. If that would be, let me see. I'll just try and turn the camera around. But you can sort of see.
Oh my God.
There's some here. Yeah, it's hard to say what I'm working on now, but I'm just kind of just always working. So let's see.
Oh my gosh. There's some new ones. How large are those canvases?
These are 8x8. Yeah. And so these are some newer ones here, some sculpture.
Oh, that's beautiful. Now, is it oil? What is the?
Yeah, these are a mixture actually of oils and acrylics together. We have some sculpture.
Oh my gosh, is that amazing?
Stuff here. There's a lot of works on vinyl. These guys here. It's hard for me to tell like what I'm able to show you, but let me see.
Oh, that's amazing. Now, what is that?
This face?
Yes, I love it.
That's on reverse painted clear vinyl. So that's a new one too.
That's gorgeous.
Thank you. More. And then so this is where the baby plays.
Yeah. How old is the baby now?
He's going to be 2.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So
that's interesting. Now that yellow piece up there. Oh, is that beautiful?
Thank you. Yeah, that was part of actually a commission where the client commissioned me, and I did 2 other options, and this is one of the options that I kept, that's why I do it. So yeah.
Absolutely beautiful.
Thank you. Let's see. And this is basically where I work, in this area.
And then are those prints or those?
Oh, these right here?
Yeah.
These are actually paintings on old road maps that I'm working on right now.
Oh, they're great.
Thank you.
Oh, those are, now can people buy them? Let's talk about, let's go back to commerce. How do people get in touch and purchase things from you?
They can just reach out. I do studio visits all the time. Yep. I have, here, let me just sit down again. But yeah, I do, people are constantly reaching out, and then I'll just do a studio visit and then show them what I have. And then, that's how it works. It's pretty basic. It's just, send me an email or a text and just get in touch and set up a time and just walk you through the studio. So yeah, that's how it works. Amazing.
Well, you're in the Strip District, very easy to find right there. You have a very cool moniker out on the outside. Is it Smallman?
Penn Avenue.
Penn Avenue. You're on Penn Avenue.
Yeah,
well, I think you're incredible. I do. I'm a huge fan, and I just appreciate you spending some time with me today, because I saw friends of mine. They were in your studio, I think last week, purchasing a piece, and I was like, we got to get Michael on. I think you're so good, and I'm so happy that Pittsburgh's been able to be a place where you call home and be part of the art community, because I just think it's fantastic. So thank you.
I am too. Yeah, I'm very, very happy about that. So
that's wonderful.
Thank you so much for having me on. And
yeah, of course.
You have to stop down to the studio at some point too.
I promise you, I promise you I will. I absolutely will. And you'll be like, please leave. You'll be like, tell me all about this stuff. You'll be like, we have to close the shop. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you, Michael. Have a really good weekend, and we appreciate you so much. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right.
Okay, goodbye.